says the program goes beyond a once-off competition and creates lasting connections.
Some of the students, they will not have just a one-time event. This platform actually connects these brilliant minds together. They form teams with people whom they have never met together. Actually, even one of the winners, the students are from different degrees they are doing, different specializations from different universities, and they met together for this platform through this platform, and they have come up with a solution.
For the judges, innovation and focus on real-world challenges were key criteria. President and regional head for TCS for Middle East and Africa, Samantha Roy, reflects on what impressed
from different universities, and they met together for this platform through this platform, and they have come up with a solution.
For the judges, innovation and focus on real-world challenges were key criteria. President and regional head for TCS for Middle East and Africa, Samantha Roy, reflects on what impressed him.
I am very trained. The second is by seeing how well they have researched and looked into both for South Africa and surrounding mankind problems. And when we came here, we were looking for young innovators to focus on.
He adds that clarity and precision made all the difference in selecting the winners.
Using AI, it is very easy to come and state the second problems which are how well global in nature. They have very difficult and actually to get through problems and implement them. So when a problem statement is specific, actually how specific the problem is.
He adds that clarity and precision made all the difference in selecting the winners. Team Agri Century developed a smart technology solution to support smallholder farmers. Team member Pemelo Maile spoke about their project.
Implement them. So when a problem statement is specific, it helps both decide who the winner is as well as to implement it in the future.
This year's winners, Team Agri Century, developed a smart technology solution to support smallholder farmers. Team member Pemelo Maile spoke about their project.
Instead of using precision agricultural tools, which are available for industrial farms. However, for the small guy, these are often seen as too expensive, or too complicated for them to use, and unfortunately they tend to lose out. So the problem we found is essentially yields or improved economies like farm management practices that comes with instead of using precision
Sustainathon 2025 not only celebrated innovation but also highlighted the power of collaboration and youth-driven solutions in building a more food-secure South Africa. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebogang Mabange in Johannesburg, South Africa. Sustainathon 2025 not only celebrated innovation but also highlighted the power of collaboration and youth-driven solutions in building a more food-secure South Africa. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebogang Mabange.
It's 7 o'clock Central African time. Good morning, and this is Rise and Shine. If you've just joined us, thanks and welcome. This is Channel Africa. We're coming live to you from our Johannesburg studios in South Africa. Find us on www.channelafrica.co.za, on the SABC Plus app via mobile phone, as well as YouTube. We're live streaming there at Channel Africa 1 is our handle. Thanks and welcome. Asanda Beda. This is Channel Africa. Coming up in this hour, we look at South Africa's President from our Johannesburg studios leading the South African delegation. Find us on www.channelafrica of the United Nations General Assembly. The SABC also, Guinea held a long-awaited referendum on Sunday. We live streaming Constitution at Channel Africa 1 is our handle. Of course, those stories and more are coming up. Coming up in this hour, we look at South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa, and then following her South African delegation to the high-level segment of the United Nations General Assembly. Also, Guinea held a long-awaited referendum on Sunday on a new constitution. We'll find out more about that. Of course, those stories and more are coming up. Let's start with our news update.
South Africa's President
and then
Cyril Ramaphosa has arrived in New York to participate in the high-level segment of the United Nations General Assembly, which will mark its 80th anniversary this week. Ramaphosa will today participate in a two-state solution conference on the Palestinian question. The South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has arrived in New York state. Ramaphosa will also attend the general segment of the United Nations General Assembly, which will mark its 80th anniversary this week. Ramaphosa will today participate in a two-state solution conference on the Palestinian question. This comes as Britain, Australia and Canada recognize the Palestinian state. Ramaphosa will also attend the general debate tomorrow,
health, a special event on climate action, followed by a bilateral engagement with US business and a trade and foreign relations, and then a host to country on Thursday. He participates in a G20 foreign ministers meeting on sustainable and resilient global economy, an event on the Global Leaders Network on women's, children's and
South Africa's National Police Commissioner Fani Masemola is expected to respond to some of the KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Nkankana's allegations when he appears before the Mandlanga Commission of Inquiry in Pretoria this morning. They include alleged lack of communication on the disbandment of the KwaZulu-Natal South Africa's National Police Commissioner Fani Masemola is expected to respond to some of the KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner starting on Wednesday allegations when he appears before the Mandlanga Commission of Inquiry in Pretoria this morning. They include alleged lack of communication on the disbandment of the KwaZulu-Natal Political Killings Task Team. Masemola will be the second witness after Mkhwanazi, who testified for 3 days, starting on Wednesday last week.
But with limited capacity. Last week, General Political testified that he received no official confirmation from National Police Commissioner General Masemola on the disbandment of the decision that Mkhwanazi says was meant to be taken by General Masemola. The PKTT continue to operate, but with limited capacity.
Candidate for the United Transformation Movement in the recent tripartite elections in Malawi has sent a congratulatory message to Arthur Peter Mutharika of the Democratic
decision that Mkhwanazi says was meant to be taken by General Masemola.
Facebook page. Kabambe, presidential candidate for the United Transformation Movement in the recent tripartite elections in Malawi's democracy. The Malawi Electoral Commission has meanwhile expressed deep concern over premature declarations of victory and public statements contradicting official results. MEC Chairperson Justice Annabelle Chalimanja emphasized the need for accuracy, responsibility and respect in Malawi's democracy. The Malawi Electoral Commission has meanwhile expressed deep concern over the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is calling and public statements contradicting official results. MEC Chairperson Justice Annabelle Chalimanja emphasized the need for accuracy, responsibility and respect dozens of due process in public statements sides to allow safe passage for civilians who want to. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, and lastly, tech billionaire Elon Musk was amongst those that attended the memorial service of the right-wing Christian activist after attack on a mosque in Glendale, Arizona. Both Musk and the White House have posted a video of the billionaire and President Donald Trump shaking hands. Earlier, Trump said Kirk's contribution to America would never be forgotten. Elon Musk was amongst those that attended the memorial service of the right-wing Christian at the University of Utah in Glendale, Arizona. Both Musk and the White House have posted a video of the billionaire and President Donald Trump shaking hands. Earlier, Trump said Kirk's contribution to America would never be forgotten. Kirk's widow, Erica, was one of the speakers. Kirk was shot dead at the University of Utah earlier this month. BBC Sarah Smith was
with many speakers saying his message will be heard by more people after his death than it was during his lifetime. Widow Erica convinced his murder will accelerate the Conservative before saying and amplify his right-wing views. President Trump, the headline speaker, said America is a nation in grief, in shock and in mourning. Charlie Kirk is being celebrated as a martyr, with many speakers saying his message will be heard by more people after his death than it was during his lifetime. Convinced his murder will accelerate the Conservative movement and amplify his right-wing views.
SABC News.
For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, African nations shine at the World Championships out in Tokyo, Japan, while Max Verstappen wins the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. I'll have details of these and other stories.
SABC News. Africa, voici Abedi. Abedi est un passionné de musique dans l'âme. Il a un goût pour toutes sortes de musique et passe ses journées à écouter Channel Africa.
J'aime beaucoup la musique africaine.
Devinez quoi? Channel Africa veut aider Abedi et les mélomanes du monde entier à découvrir encore plus de musique incroyable. Africa, voici Abedi. C'est pourquoi Channel Africa appelle les artistes africains à soumettre leur sorte de musique et passer ses journées à écouter Channel Africa.
J'aime beaucoup la musique africaine.
Allumez l'adresse musique@channelafrica.co.za et les mélomanes du monde entier. Les soumissions sont votre chance d'être entendues, mais elles ne garantissent pas une playlist. Toutes les soumissions seront soigneusement examinées pour voir si elles répondent aux exigences de notre station. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine. De nous fournir toutes vos informations pertinentes. Allumez l'adresse musique@channelafrica.co.za. Les soumissions sont votre chance d'être entendues, mais elles ne garantissent pas une playlist. Toutes les soumissions seront soigneusement examinées.
South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa leading the South African delegation to the high-level segment of the United Nations General Assembly. Ramaphosa, who arrived in New York last night, is expected to champion global solutions and UN reform at the organization's 80th session. Over 100 heads of state and government are expected to attend the South African delegation under the high-level segment together of the United Nations General Assembly Development Ramaphosa, who arrived in New York last night, is expected to joined by Dr. Kingsley Makumela and UN reformer diplomat and international relations expert and director. Over 100 heads of state and government are expected to attend. Thank you for joining us. And how are you this morning? Better together, 80 years and more for peace, what is that one thing that Ramaphosa should be pushing for the hardest? Joined by Dr. Kingsley Makumela, delivers his speech at the UN diplomat and international relations expert and director at Risk Recon. Dr. Makumela, thank you for joining us. And how are you this morning?
The continent. Jambo, Asanda.
If you look at the budget of the peacekeeping mission, that Ramaphosa should be pushing for the hardest as he delivers his speech at the UN General Assembly.
It's less than 1% of the Pentagon budget. Asanda, and with the declining funding and the withdrawal from Mali and Somalia, within the continent is likely to face serious challenges. If you look at the budget of the peacekeeping nation this year is around the conflict in the Sudan. So that will be the US dollars. That is just less than 1% of the Pentagon and given the fact that Asanda, with the decline in the funding and there will be a focused discussion on the resolution of the conflicts around the world. So silencing the gun should be the biggest thrust of the president in my own view.
So the Palestinian issue is one of those that put South Africa on the international spotlight since the ICJ case. But how much weight does Ramaphosa carry for him to be taken seriously on this particular front of Palestine?
You know, the Palestinian issue has taken a total different turn of events now. Brazil has joined South Africa at the ICJ court. They are members of the G7 who are now recognizing the state of Palestine. So it has totally taken a different turn. But the focus around the Palestinian issue will be around the humanitarian catastrophe that's unfolding there. And the ground force that Israel has launched in the last 2 weeks or so. That would take the center stage. And I think because there's a lot of international focus on that, it's likely to get much more attention than any other issue. Recalling also, Asanda, that last week, the United States just vetoed a resolution for calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. So that will still remain a focus within the United Nations. But there's tension building between China and the United States, which I think during the opening tomorrow, we are likely to hear pronouncement by President Trump. And whatever Trump says tomorrow, it will also set the tone between the opening and sometimes in February or January when the general debate comes to an end.
Since Trump has announced that he's not going to be joining the G20 meeting, but will rather send his deputy, is there anything more that Ramaphosa should discuss with him then after his address?
Trump is unlikely to meet with Ramaphosa on the margin of the UN General Assembly. I don't think South Africa should be seen to be running around the Americans. Last week, the Minister of Trade and Industry, Pakistan, has had a discussion with Americans around the tariff issue. I think we shouldn't focus on that. There are a lot of global issues that now should take center stage. And the tension that is building around the world, the question of peace. And given the theme of this year's General Assembly, to look into issues of peace, development, and human rights, I think the strategic thrust should be on a bigger picture rather than more on South Africa.
Talking strategies, the South African delegation is later expected to meet with U.S. business delegations. What would you say will come out of that?
I think it's to try to allay and communicate clear message about what's going on in South Africa. Because there's been a hype around the country. There's been a hype around, and to a large extent, a misinformation around the political dynamics in the country. South Africa remained very stable within the framework of the democratic dispensation in the country. There's no way that South Africa poses any threat for anyone's investment in the country. I think the message should be around the stability of the country, the constitutional rule of law of the country, to allay this fear. We can't, as a country, operate outside the framework of the law. And the South African dispensation is highly respected. And I think really accentuating that kind of a message and conveying the message to business will be very important.
From Palestine to Sudan, what about conflict on our own continent? Some criticism is that very little is done, especially in the war in Sudan. What should be done on that?
You know, the focus, that's why I'm saying the focus, Asanda, of the president should be around the conflict in the Sahel that is unfolding, the conflict in the Horn of Africa, the conflict even in Mozambique. You recall that a few weeks ago, the Thabo Mbeki Foundation held a meeting with a specific focus on the conflict in the DRC that shouldn't be forgotten. I think those are the issues that South Africa should focus around this rubric of silencing the gun within the continent, and much more focus on putting the United Nations Security Council on the spot in terms of funding some of these peacekeeping missions, providing funding for some of the dialogues that are taking place. It's not only at the negotiation table, but also at the pre-negotiations, like what the Thabo Mbeki Foundation is trying to do, to bring parties together. So I think prevention of this conflict and fostering understanding should be the strategic thrust of our contribution at the General Assembly this year.
In closing, what else would you expect from President Cyril Ramaphosa's speech?
You know, the president will be back-footed to a large extent, Asanda, given what's going on domestically here. The question of the Madlanga Commission, that it's really raising serious questions around the capacity of the state. There are people who are starting to talk about South Africa as a failed state. So those will be issues that will come at the backdrop of the present participation. There's also a view that South Africa has become a kakistrophe. And those are issues that must be sorted out to allay the concern that there's still a rule of law, despite the fact that we are seeing criminal activities that are coming up. And there's no way that South Africa really, it's a mafia state. You know, these are issues that are coming up. The president will be back-footed around the question of the ghost workers, that South Africa is spending about 3.9 billion rands on ghost workers. So these are some of the issues that people will try to punch at South Africa and say, but you're talking about this thing. Here are the challenges that you are having in your country. How are you handling this? You're looking for funding from the United Nations. Here are the funds that you can't account for in your country. So those are issues that will be at the backdrop of the president. So the domestic issues are not giving the president the necessary oomph required to participate at the UN.
Dr. Makhubela, thank you so much again for your time. We appreciate it here on Channel Africa.
Always a pleasure, Asanda.
Thanks. Dr. Kingsley Makhubela is Director at Risk Recon, talking about the South African delegation that's going to be attending the high-level segment of the United Nations General Assembly. President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa leading that delegation.
September, Channel Africa celebrates Heritage Month, a time to honor the stories, the rhythms, and the languages that make us who we are. Whether you're in Lagos or the shores of Zanzibar, to the mountains of Lesotho or the markets of Dakar, we are united in diversity.
Najivunia kuwa Mwafrika.
Kukondolera Afrika ndiye nduwake.
Proudly African and fabulous.
Let us preserve our languages. Let's embrace our uniqueness. Let's embrace our cultures and celebrate the beauty of our continent. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Você é fluente em português? É apaixonado por rádio e quer trabalhar na África do Sul? Você tem documentos que o qualificam para trabalhar na África do Sul? Nesse caso, podemos ter uma oportunidade para você trabalhar no Canal África. Envie seu currículo e demonstração para Canal África at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Lembre-se, se você não receber alguma resposta nossa em 14 dias, isso significa que você não foi selecionado. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam, rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
Guinea held a long-awaited referendum on Sunday on a new constitution that could permit coup leader Mamadi Doumbouya to run for president if he chose to, something he vowed not to do when he seized power in 2021. The military-led government in Guinea, which is home to the world's largest reserves of bauxite, already missed a December 31st, 2024 deadline that it had set itself for a return to civilian rule. Its presidential election is currently expected to take place in December, and we're now joined on the line by Africa analyst Kwezi Ngabisa. Kwezi, always great having these sessions with you and getting analysis. How are you on this Monday?
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
A pleasure. What do you make of this referendum in Guinea, and how significant is it as you see it?
Well, it's long overdue in the sense that as the continent, we almost always are clear of the fact that we do not like unconstitutional changes to government. A coup falls right squarely onto that category of events. However, we never really invest time to actually say that then what happens when we have a coup? So a referendum in the instance of Guinea is intended to be an expression of what should be a popular conclusion by the part of the people that are actually affected by a coup, to say that, do we want the coup to be a transition point towards democracy? What should be the nature of that democracy? What is it that the new transition should be informed by, that will make sure that we don't revert back to the conditions that led to a coup? So what is actually happening in Guinea at this point in time, I like to think of it as a positive step, not just simply for people of Guinea, but for the continent, to say that it is not enough to simply say that you do not want coups, but you must also communicate, allow people to communicate what it is, how it is that they would like to see a coup jettisoned out for civilian rule, for democracy to be reintroduced.
Critics fear the constitutional referendum is the latest attempt by a military-run government to legitimize its rule in West and Central Africa. What do you make of this criticism?
It is a very valid criticism, because the reality of the matter is that everybody, almost any constitution, wants to be self-affirming, meaning we are an expression of the will of the people. We are the apex legal body of work that should give expression to how people will be represented in government. However, the reality of the matter is that those that end up being custodians of that legal body, of that constitutionalism, they subvert democracy. They do the things that they would like to do. And as such, the military feels the need to step in. You and I can have an argument all we like about the legitimacy of the military stepping in. But the reality of the matter is that once the military steps in, we need a process to actually say that how do we actually make sure that people affirm not the military, but affirm supremacy in how the transition should take place from military rule to civilian rule, from a military junta to a democracy. So I think that over time, these forms of referendums must actually become central to how the African Union, regional economic bodies, and by extension, even constitutional national legislative bodies in our countries, they must start to imagine what happens when this democracy that we are all yanking after is subverted. How do we return the country to those democratic credentials, as it were?
What will it mean for Guinea if this referendum were to pass on the part that it provides for the lengthening of presidential terms from 5 to 7 years?
Well, the reality of the matter is that some would actually argue and say that it's almost some sort of foregone conclusion that the military will get what it actually wants out of this particular referendum. But the reality of the matter, Asanda, is that as we sit here, as we have this conversation around these governments that are militarily led, we need to be asking ourselves the question, are they in essence a reflection of people's disillusionment with democracy? Because if that is the case, it means that the conversation must actually now start to take a different turn from the one that we were comfortable with, whereby political parties will come and present to citizens an alternative. There will be an opposition, there will be civil society, there will be the media. What we are currently experiencing is that mode in some countries, especially in West Africa, has been proven to be discredited. And people appear to be more interested in more stability-inspired forms of governance, militaries being the providers, the bringers of that stability. Now, it means that we are going to be confronted by a situation whereby stability by the military being the modes of government, what next? And I don't think that the people of Guinea at this point in time are as confident of giving an answer to us. And we as observers, I don't think that we're very much comfortable with the idea that a referendum by the broader people of Guinea and elsewhere would actually say that we like the stability. We will deal with the issues of representation and legitimacy later.
Kwesi, we'll leave it there for now. As far as this topic is concerned, we thank you so much again for your insights.
Good morning. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks. You too. That was Africa analyst Kwesi Mngabisa on the line speaking to us about Guinea's recently held referendum. It was on Sunday.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa's office may have interfered in policing matters to benefit a private company and minerals giant Minerals or RBM. The startling allegations were made by KwaZulu-Natal Province's Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, who testified at the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry last week. Dimakatso Lishoro has the story.
KwaZulu-Natal Police Boss Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi wrapped up his testimony on Friday. He told the Commission of Inquiry looking into interference in police operations that police resources, including the specialized task force members as well as members of the National Intervention Unit, were used to provide protection for only one company, the Richards Bay Minerals or RBM, at the request of the presidency. He doesn't say who from the presidency did the request emanate. Mkhwanazi had originally deployed a provincial team of detectives to work on unresolved murder cases at RBM, but withdrew the team when it failed to reach its goals, only to receive instructions from his boss, Fanny Masemola, to redeploy them to RBM.
Little did I know, Commissioner, that this RBM has got contacts in the high level of our country, of our government. Because what followed after that was a call that I received from my boss, the National Commission, who said to me, but I hear that you had deployed people in Richards Bay and you withdrew them. I said, yes, I deployed them there for a mission. They didn't achieve the mission. A year later, I brought them back, and they are still carrying those investigations back from my office. Then he said, no, I received a complaint from the presidency. You must send these people back. So RBM had the privilege of getting a SAPS deployment to service only them, which was funded at the national office.
On his third consecutive day on the witness stand, Mkhwanazi detailed how a Mr. Brown Mokgotsi, who is said to be an associate of Police Minister Senzo Mchunu, contacted him via WhatsApp text to warn him about his impending arrest, seemingly orchestrated by the minister.
How Brown Mokgotsi is engaging on police matters and yet is not a police officer. It made me conclude that this person, without being a police officer, has an access not just to police officers, but to the classified information of the police. And here is in position of a crime intelligence presentation. Someone that was in that room will have to explain how does Brown Mokgotsi get hold of such. And the Brown Mokgotsi, knowing even the diary of the minister, for him to say the minister is a Sigi, when I asked the chief of staff, he confirms that the minister is a Sigi. The minister on the day was visiting the incident that happened in Sigi, where many people were killed. So this was just another confirmation that this man knows exactly about the minister's movement. So he's either with him or he's informed about the minister's movement. That's why he can write messages like this. And then he wrote a message which followed at the bottom of 318, which reads, I'm going to read it on record. You are having your interest, and that maybe you are having your own Qatar. You don't listen to the CI, that is crime intelligence. Then Masimula intercepted him. So, which means General Masimula was in that meeting as well. Also spoke about your provincial crime intelligence member. Remember, he is retiring next month. And that's why he even knows that the head of crime intelligence in KZN is going on retirement. So this is a person who knows everything about the police, even knows when there's a person retiring.
Asked why he was wearing camouflage gear and flanked by armed officers during his July 6, 2025 media briefing that triggered this Madlanga commission, Mkhwanazi had this to say.
We now have to move from being a service provider to society to becoming a force in order for us to prevent the Alcadors and the Mexicos to happen in this country. Because the threat, the enemy that we saw that is infiltrating crime intelligence, is infiltrating parliament, and is controlling our executive authority and going into the heart of the police operations, which is investigation, you would really realize that you can no longer wear a tie and face this fight. So this is a fight that requires, for one, to apply the tactics that is learned over years. And one had to draw on experience I had in the task force of saying, how do you deal with a terrorist? And because as I see it now, I think this is terrorism. This is people who want to take over government, not through the ballot paper, but through these criminal activities.
He landed a final blow to the police's second highest ranking officer, General Shadrack Sibiya, who's now been suspended, saying his appointment was a huge mistake as he had been flagged as corrupt by the city of Joburg before joining the police at a very high and sensitive rank.
The heartbeat of the SAPS, that position is occupied by the person who was dismissed from the service, who comes back a year later after coming back is then promoted to that position. It's a position in the organization is very senior and very critical. So a person occupying that position must be beyond reproach. But it takes me to going back to question whether did the minister and the national commissioner do the right thing at the beginning by appointing Gerasby in that position.
The commission is expected to hear a new witness on Monday. For Channel Africa News, I'm Dimakatso Leshuru in Pretoria.
7:30 Central African Time it is now. Let's say good morning to Onele Nzinzi for news headlines.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has arrived in New York to participate in the high-level segment of the United Nations General Assembly, which will be marking its 80th anniversary this week. Presidential candidate for the United Transformation Movement, Dalitso Kabambe, in the recent tripartite elections in Malawi, has sent a congratulatory message to Arthur Peter Mutharika of the Democratic Progressives Party. Malawi's Electoral Commission has, however, expressed deep concern over premature declarations of victory and public statements contradicting official results. And U.S. President Donald Trump says the violent death of the right-wing Christian activist Charlie Kirk's violent death means that he will be remembered as a martyr for American freedom. Trump was speaking at Kirk's memorial service in Arizona yesterday. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Tsinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Now let's check in with the world of sports as we say good morning again to Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Asanda. Very good morning once again from the Sports Desk. Botswana produced a brilliant performance to win the men's 4x400 meter relay final in atrocious conditions on Sunday, edging out the USA as well as South Africa in a blanket finish to become the first African winners of the event. So as rain hammered down, the US, who had scraped into the final after beating Kenya in a runoff on Sunday morning, led the way at the final changeover. However, Colin Genatibi, the 21-year-old of the winner of the individual title, the 400-meter event, ran a fantastic leg to snatch gold in 2 minutes, 57.78 seconds. The US, winners of 9 of the last world titles, changed all 4 of their athletes for the final from the morning runoff and took silver from South Africa by 0.02 of a second after both were timed at 2 minutes, 57.83 seconds. Botswana finishing 5th, by the way, on the medal table with a total of 3 medals. The 3 medals comprised of 2 gold as well as 1 bronze medal. Meanwhile, Kenya finished second on the medals table as the 2025 World Athletics Championships concluded in Tokyo, Japan yesterday. So Kenya won a total of 11 medals, made up of 7 gold, 2 silver and 2 bronze medals behind the USA. The strong performances was highlighted by multiple victories from its women distance runners, including Beatrice Chebet as well as Faith Kipyegon. Now, Kenya women were responsible for 6 of the 7 gold medals, with Beatrice Chebet winning gold in the 10,000 as well as the 5,000 meter events, securing a long distance double. Faith Kipyegon, meanwhile, added another gold medal with her victory in the women's 1,500 meter event. Perez Chepchere won the women's marathon gold medal, while Emmanuel Wanyoni was the sole male gold medalist for Kenya, winning the gold in the 800 meter final on Saturday. In football news now, Pep Guardiola's attempt at parking the bus in London to help Manchester City pinch 3 vital points almost paid off. But Gabriel Martellini's 93rd minute equaliser salvaged a 1-1 draw for the host side, for the host Arsenal, although neither side will be left satisfied as the Premier League title aspirations were dealt a blow. Now, City boss Pep Guardiola's dismay was captured by a pained expression on his face at full time, slowly applauding the travelling support before dragging himself down the tunnel with slumped shoulders. Not only will the manner of the late goal hurt him and the team, but it also left leaders Liverpool as the real victor this weekend, going 5 points clear at the top of the table and looking ominous in the defence of their crown with a 100% record this after 5 games. So let's hear from Guardiola as he looks back on that performance against Arsenal.
Heads off to the team, how they're resilient. Of course, it's so difficult where you're not effective in high pressing and you're not effective in the build-up. Always is so tough and so difficult to do it. We make some transitions. I think the result is fair. It's a little bit, we're close in the 5 or 10 results, but I think in general Arsenal was better.
On to netball news now. New Zealand continued their dominance over the Spar Proteas of South Africa with a commanding 77-51 win in the first of 3 international test matches in Auckland, New Zealand yesterday. So this result also marks the home team's 37th victory in 39 clashes between the two nations. Now, the last time the two teams met was at the 2023 Netball World Cup in Cape Town, right here in South Africa, where they played to a dramatic 48-all draw. So this fixture was also the first time since 2018 that South Africa faced New Zealand on their own home soil. Jeannie van Dijk is the coach of the Proteas side, and she was left disappointed with that result.
Definitely very disappointed with our performance tonight. I think, the damage was done after that first quarter. The speed and the precision and the momentum, I think, is something that you don't know what you don't know. You don't know how it's going to feel on that court. You can watch as many videos as possible, but once you play against it, then you understand the magnitude of what you're up against. So I think definitely not the start we wanted.
On to Formula One news now. McLaren's Lando Norris reduced teammate Oscar Piastri's championship lead to 25 points. This after finishing 7th at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix after the Australian crashed out on the first lap. Red Bull's Max Verstappen took a dominant victory to underline McLaren's fears that he could just become a title contender, even if he's still 69 points behind Piastri with about 7 races to go until the end of the season. But Piastri's first big mistake of the season was not as costly as it could have been, because main rival Norris was unable to make any ground from his 7th position on the grid. Norris became stuck behind other cars and could gain just about 6 points on Piastri. McLaren tried to offset strategy with a late pit stop in the attempt to give Norris a tyre advantage on the closing lap. Let's hear from the eventual winner, Verstappen.
No, I mean, I would say George was also quick. I think most of it was just done in the beginning, right? Just your starting position, and then, you just do your lap times. But around here, it's not easy to be constantly on the limit with the track layout, the wind as well, because all your lap time is on entry, and that is also the most risky part of the track. If you just overshoot it a bit, you're in the wall. So finding that limit is tough. But, the car was working well. The deck was good. In general, just quite straightforward.
And finally, in tennis news, Italy defended their Billie Jean King Cup title as Yasmin Paolini beat Jessica Pegula to wrap up a 2-0 victory over the USA. The world number 8 was in supreme form as she raced to a 6-4, 6-2 victory in Shenzhen to secure Italy's 6th title. Now, Paolini is undefeated in singles and doubles at the Billie Jean King Cup this year and has just lost one of her previous 10 matches in the competition. The 29-year-old was part of the Italian team that finished runner-ups to Canada back in 2023 before guiding them to their first title in 11 years against Slovakia just last year. Well, that concludes your sports news this hour. I'm back with a final sports update on Africa Rise and Shine in the third and final hour of the show. As always, for any sports stories you'd like to share with us, send us an email. That's to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Remember to also give us a call on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Africa. It's time to plug into the heartbeat of the continent. Tune in to Channel Africa, your go-to radio station that broadcasts in
L'Afrique du Sud célèbre la journée nationale du
Kabla hujaitwa kwa jina la Double K,
or more of our forests have been destroyed.
Estamos ndi Partido Africano da Independência da Guiné.
See, Channel Africa represents every corner of this amazing land. From Lagos to Cape Town, Nairobi to Dakar, we've got you covered with the freshest news, music, and cultures. So, turn up the volume, feel the rhythm. Enjoy the conversation. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
And now let's say good morning once again for our business update to Buntle Hedbush. She has our economics news.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and a very good morning to our listeners. In our top business story at this hour, the United States and South Africa are now engaged in text-based negotiations on a future bilateral trade deal, and Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Park Stau, says significant progress on the way forward has been made. Ahead of joining the South African delegation for this week's UN General Assembly, Tau spent a number of days in Washington, D.C., meeting with the U.S. Trade Representative and key members of Congress. The minister indicated that part of the talks sought to reduce the high 30% duty imposed on South African exports and the future of the African Growth and Opportunity Act, which is due to expire at the end of September.
There were indications that we're making significant progress in terms of the discussions and the way forward. And what's the way forward, you would ask? The U.S. will give us a revised text on the basis of the comments and questions over the past week. We anticipate that that would be given to us early in the next week. It would give us about 2 weeks to consider, to consult stakeholders, sister departments, go to cabinet, get a mandate, and be able to respond. And from there, we'd be able to then get into the details of the negotiations.
South Africa's Independent Financial Advisors Forum has slammed the city of Tshwane in the Gauteng province for pushing ahead with a tender to appoint a single medical aid broker for its employees. IFAF, a non-profit organization representing accredited brokers, first flagged concerns last month after the city advertised the contract, which it says is irregular and unlawful. It says a medical aid brokerage tender violates employees' rights to choose an alternative medical aid broker. IFAF Deputy Chairperson Buti Sigasa.
When we attended their compulsory briefing on the 26th of August, we raised a few things, but one of them was, did they have consent from employees of the city or their representative? The answer was no. Now, in terms of Regulation 28.7, as clarified, the city requires consent for the city to act as an agent to appoint a broker. So they don't have that consent, so therefore they can't act as an agent. Now it's shocking that the city still wants to proceed with a tender, whereas they don't have the agency.
A 35-year-old rural entrepreneur from Zebediela in South Africa's Limpopo province has amazed food lovers by producing his own mayonnaise called Queen Musima mayonnaise. Kutsiso Chwene's idea to produce mayonnaise originated in his grandmother's kitchen, who taught him the craft. The young entrepreneur also employs 8 fellow villagers, 6 on a permanent basis and 2 seasonally. He wants his mayonnaise to compete with other well-known brands in the market. Chwene says funding is imperative for the expansion of his business.
We are looking for the funds so that we can buy the industrial blenders so that we can produce a high quality of mayonnaise, and then also to finish up the projects that we have started, which is a mini factory. We want to build a big factory so that, we can hire more people in the community, and we are urging to the government of South Africa that we have the products here. The only thing that we need funding.
Mauritius Central Bank Governor Ramasitanen has agreed to resign this week following Prime Minister Navin Ramgoolam's call for him to step down amid signs of a power struggle in the bank. The decision comes after several weeks of internal tensions that have weakened the institution. The Bank of Mauritius plays a crucial role in the country's economy. It manages monetary policy, supervises the banking system, and ensures the stability of public debt. Some of Europe's biggest airports battled to restore normal operations yesterday after hackers disrupted automatic check-in systems, with Brussels asking airlines to cancel half of Monday's flight departures due to persistent problems. Hackers on Friday targeted check-in and boarding systems provider Collins Aerospace, owned by RTX. disrupting operations at London's Heathrow, Europe's busiest airport, Berlin Airport, and in Brussels. Passengers faced long queues, cancellations, and delays on Saturday. Airport officials say while the disruption eased significantly in Berlin and Heathrow yesterday, delays and flight cancellations were continuing. In a statement, Collins said it was working with 4 impacted airports and airline customers and was in the final stages of completing the updates needed to restore full functionality. And now for a look at the indicators this morning, $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,492 naira. In Botswana, it's 13 pula 11. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shillings 63. And in Zambia, it's 23 kwacha 61. Moving to the BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 32, Russia 83 rubles 41. In India, it's 88 rupees and 9, China 7 yuan 11, and South Africa $1 is trading at 17 rand 31 cents this morning. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is slightly stronger this morning at $3,692 per ounce. Platinum at $1,420 per ounce, also stronger, while Brent crude oil is at $67.10 a barrel. And those are your business news. I'll be back with more in the next hour. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Buntle Headbush.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam. Rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
7:47 Central African time it is. Let's take a look at this story now. Brazil, having over the weekend announced that it will join South Africa on its case against Israel at the International Court of Justice. Pretoria is accusing Israel of committing a genocide in the Gaza Strip, where scores of people have died since the conflict started when Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th, 2023. International condemnation is growing against the Jewish state as the conflict is escalating due to its ongoing bombardment in Gaza. Brazil has invoked Article 63 of the Statute of the ICJ and filed in the registry of the court a declaration of intervention in the case. To get the views of the Palestinian Solidarity Community, we're joined by Professor Usuf Chikte, who is coordinator from the Palestine Solidarity Campaign. Professor Chikte, thank you for joining us. How are you on this Monday morning?
I'm very good, and I'm afraid we can't say the same of Palestinians. And thank you for that introduction. And I think it needs a slight amendment. The war didn't start on October the 7th. It's been it has been there. The genocide has been there since 1948 with the Nakba and the expulsion of the Palestinians. And what's happening in Gaza now, 70% who are refugees from the Nakba of 1948 and 1967, the Naksa. So I think Ilan Papi describes what is happening in Palestine, what has happened in Palestine since 1948 as an incremental genocide. And what we're seeing now is a genocide. That is what the United Nations rapporteur on human rights, Judge Nari Pillay, has pronounced around here. But your question is, and your focus is on Brazil's involvement.
Yes, and what is your take on Brazil's move?
Brazil's involvement is, I think it has profound legal, political, moral implication, and in the immediate terms, it will have little impact on the ground. In terms of, the United Nations, the ICJ is the top court of the United Nations, and the United Nations is prevaricating on this matter, and Brazil has joined about 13 other countries which has intervened in the case that South Africa has brought. And it has done so in Article 63, and Article 63 essentially is around how the court will interpret the Genocide Convention in terms of, and Brazil refers especially to Articles 1, 2, and 3 of the Genocide Convention. And so, but Brazil is an important actor. It's one of the largest, biggest, most populous countries in Latin America. So there's growing international support for the South African case, and support from a BRICS country, a country from Latin America, and it joins other countries, Spain, Mexico, Ireland, Turkey, and other, Colombia and Chile as well. So the international weight that Brazil now adds to the case is important. You know, Israel has not adhered to the provisional orders which South Africa sought in terms of stopping starvation, increasing humanitarian aid, and stopping the military campaigns. And the court will only sit is awaiting the response from Israel to respond to the South African charges and the provisional orders, and that will be on the 26th of January. So it's a long wait. The provisional orders are binding, and Israel is getting diplomatic cover from the United States and funding to continue its genocide. So politically, it's important. Legally, it will add weight to it, and morally, it adds to the tsunami of support that the Palestinians are receiving in seeing a war undergoing a genocide. So that, in a nutshell, is what is taking place. You know, it's complemented also by last night's announcement that the UK, Canada, and Australia will recognize the Palestinian state. But you know, it's all these maneuverings gives little comfort to the immediate needs of the Palestinians. And we've seen Israel has entered Gaza City, bombed it, and ethnically cleansing that part of it. And there seems to be no immediate relief for them. So the International Court of Justice and the Brazil application is important. That in the long run is important to designate Israel as a genocidal state, which has already been done by Nabi Pillay and international scholars. But you know, we need to seek immediate relief. There's a global Sumud flotilla where the civilian populations are providing aid or providing relief through a flotilla around that, and Israel has threatened to bomb them, and that's a big issue. The United Nations will decide, and we've spoken about the upcoming General Assembly meetings on Israel as a Palestine, to the recognition of an Israel of Palestine as a state, and that will also shift the thinking around the needs, the inalienable rights of Palestinians for self-determination, and not to be subject to a genocide, an apartheid, and an oppression.
So there's been a tsunami of support, as you've noted, but what about the frustrations that you are undergoing as the Palestinian Solidarity Campaign in terms of how the world is reacting to the conflict?
Yeah, so what we are doing as civil society, we're putting added pressure on our South African government from this end. Third parties have an obligation in terms of all the rulings that the UN has pronounced upon. And we're going to go on a big march in Cape Town on the 27th to Parliament. And while we applaud the South African efforts at the ICJ, at the International Court of Justice, the trade in coal still fuels the genocide. You know, there's still a genocidal economy that is taking place where big companies like Amazon, who are based in Cape Town, and we've protested there to say that they must cease their facilitation and their complicity in the genocide. The coal from South Africa has increased. The trade from South Africa has increased. So there's a dissonance between what South Africa says at the international court and what is happening here in South Africa in terms of trade and its ongoing support for Israel, albeit indirectly. We're also asking for Israel to be isolated, for the ambassador to be kicked out, and the embassy to be closed, which Parliament has decided on, but which hasn't been enacted yet. We're also calling for rapid prosecution of those South Africans who have joined the Israeli army and in contravention of a Foreign Military Assistance Act, and so that is what we're pursuing. We're also encouraging and demanding that the South African government invokes the Unite for Peace resolution. You know, part of the problem is that the United Nations Security Council is blocking aid, a ceasefire to Gaza, in Gaza, and they've done so recently again. And so we're asking South Africa with the Hague Group of Nations, to ensure that they invoke at the General Assembly the Unite for Peace resolution, which will ensure that we bypass the veto effect of the United States at the Security Council for us to get aid in, for a ceasefire to be taken place, for Israel not to be able to conduct its military campaigns in the area, and for protection of the Palestinians. That is what the kinds of things that we're trying to enforce, demand our government to do, and we're boycotting, divesting, and sanctioning Israel, and that is part of our overall strategy.
President Ramaphosa of South Africa is expected to raise the Palestinian issue at the UN General Assembly. That's going to be tomorrow, Tuesday. What do you expect from him?
We expect from him for a call for the implementation of the provisional orders which the ICJ has pronounced upon. And we also expect from him to call on, to say that the Parliament, that the resolution of Parliament needs to be implemented. It's sitting with him, and he's not signing that resolution which says that Israel must be kicked out of South Africa, which will put into motion a whole series of things like Israel must be kicked out of FIFA as well. He will probably say that they are going to submit, in terms of the articles of the United Nations Security Council, measures to enforce the provisions of the court by the Security Council. But we know that that's going to meet a dead end from the United States. So we're in that kind of deadlock, and so we're expecting after that for him to go to for South Africa to go to the General Assembly to invoke the Unite for Peace resolution and the right to protect resolution, which will minimize the effect of a veto on the part of the United States, which has been supporting and has been a co-belligerent with respect to the genocide with Israel against the Palestinians.
Professor Chikte, we thank you so much again for your time and your valuable insights.
Thank you, Asanda. Strength to you.
Pleasure, you too. Professor Usuf Chikte, coordinator from the Palestine Solidarity Campaign, talking to us here on Rise and Shine. Right, as we enter the third and final hour of Rise and Shine now, we say good morning to you, and we'll be talking in this hour about Malawians who are on edge as they await the outcome of this last week's election vote, voting continuing their provisional results, having put former President Peter Mutharika as an early lead, but we'll find out more as we get into that conversation. That story and more, of course, coming up in this hour. My name is Asanda Beda. Let's say good morning to Onele Nsinzi. She's got our news headlines and then, our news bulletin actually, and then the headlines will be on the world of sports with Musibudi Makura.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has arrived in New York to participate in the high-level segment of the United Nations General Assembly, which will mark its 80th anniversary this week. Ramaphosa will today participate in a two-state solution conference on the Palestinian question. This comes as Britain, Australia and Canada recognize the Palestinian state. Ramaphosa will also attend the general debate tomorrow. Sean Bryce Peace reports.
The general debate is a key focal point on Tuesday, followed by a meeting at the Council on Foreign Relations and then a host country reception. Wednesday sees Ramaphosa participate in a summit on a sustainable and resilient global economy, an event on the Global Leaders Network on women's, children's and adolescents' health, a special event on climate action followed by bilateral engagements with US business and a trade and investment dialogue. Ahead of his departure on Thursday, he participates in a G20 foreign ministers meeting on the margins of the UNGA. Sherman Brycepeace, SABC News, New York.
South Africa's National Police Commissioner Fani Masemola is expected to respond to some of the KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi's allegations when he appears before the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry in Pretoria this morning. They include alleged lack of communication on the disbandment of the KwaZulu-Natal Political Killings Task Team. Masemola will be the second witness after Mkhwanazi, who testified for 3 days starting on Wednesday last week. Sibahle Mota reports.
Last week, General Mkhwanazi testified that he received no official confirmation from National Police Commissioner General Masemola on the disbandment of the KwaZulu-Natal Political Killings Task Team. He says because of this, the PKTT continued to operate but with limited capacity. The KwaZulu-Natal Political Killings Task Team was disbanded by Police Minister Senzo Mchunu at the end of December 2024. This is a decision that Mkhwanazi says was meant to be taken by General Masemola.
Talitho Kabambe, presidential candidate for the United Transformation Movement in the recent tripartite elections in Malawi, has sent a congratulatory message to Arthur Peter Mutharika of the Democratic Progressive Party. The message was posted on his official Facebook page. Kabambe has urged the incumbent president, Lazarus Chakwera, to hand over power to Mutharika as a sign of maturity in Malawi's democracy. The Malawi's Electoral Commission has meanwhile expressed deep concern over premature declarations of victory and public statements contradicting official results. The MEC chairperson, Justice Annabel Talimanja, emphasized the need for accuracy, responsibility and respect for due process in public statements related to the electoral process. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is calling for an immediate end to fighting in the Sudanese city of El Fasher in North Darfur. His appeal comes after an attack on a mosque during Friday's prayer that reportedly killed dozens of worshippers. Guterres has urged both sides to allow safe passage for civilians who want to leave. And lastly, U.S. President Donald Trump says the violent death of right-wing Christian activist Charlie Kirk's violent death means that he will be remembered as a martyr for American freedom. Trump was speaking at Kirk's memorial service in Glendale, Arizona yesterday. Kirk was a leading figure in Trump's MAGA movement. The activist was shot dead at a university in Utah in a suspected politically motivated attack earlier this month. The BBC's Arunode Mukherjee.
The message was loud and clear that what Charlie Kirk stood for is something that we cannot forget and we must drive forward. That's how a lot of the speakers ended their address when they said, rest in peace, we've got it from here. So I think that's the message that all the senior members were trying to communicate to the people who had gathered here.
For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Tsinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news is our team from Africa, or rather teams from Africa, collected combined 23 medals at the recently concluded Athletics World Championships, while India as well as Pakistan players did not shake hands once again in the Asia Cup. I'll tell you why at the bottom of the hour.
From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam, rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
Madapiri pazoshitika. Madapiri pazoshitika.
Boma la dziko la South Sudan alengeza kuti wachiwiri kwa mtsogoleri wa dzikolo Riek Machar akuyenera kuyankha mlandu ofuna kulanda dziko wakupha komanso okonza ziwawa, ndipo mtolankhani wathu nkummawa kwa Africa Fraser Onene akuwunikirapo.
Muchikalata chomwe chinalengezedwa ndi nduna yoona zamalamulo komanso chilungamo ya dziko la South Sudan, chikalatachi chinalengeza kuti wachiwiri kwa president wa dzikolo Riek Machar apezeka ndi milandu yokupha, yofuna kuwukira boma komanso kulanda dziko ndi kuyambitsa ziwawa. Riek Machar akhala akusungidwa mokakamizidwa ku nyumba kwawo kuyambira mwezi wa Marichi chaka chino. Mwezi wa Marichiwu asilikali omwe mbuyomu anali mgulu lomwe limagwira ntchito limodzi ndi Machar anamenyana ndi asilikali a boma a South Sudan Defense Forces SPDF mu chigawo cha White Nile mdziko
Zochitika pa nthawi ya 6 koloko kufikira 7 koloko madzulo, lolemba mpaka lachisanu ndi Madapiri.
Good morning starts here. Rise and shine on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Malawians remain on edge as they await the outcome of this last week's election vote. Provisional results from one quarter of councils show former President Peter Mutharika has taken an early lead, in which he faces off for the fourth time against incumbent Lazarus Chakwera. Mutharika received roughly 51% of the valid votes cast in 9 of the country's 36 councils, compared with nearly 39% for Chakwera. A candidate needs to secure more than 50% of valid votes for an outright win. Otherwise, there will be a second run of voting. So to unpack this and discuss developments from Malawi's elections, we're joined by Francis Phiri, political analyst based in Malawi. Francis, how are you on this Monday? Thanks for making time.
I'm fine. Lilongwe, the capital city of Malawi, is fine and everything fine. The tally center busy, counting continues.
All right, so the latest from Malawi is that former President Peter Mutharika has taken an early lead in the election. Are there any surprises there for you?
Truly, we have seen the Malawi Electoral Commission preliminary dashboard results showing the former president, Professor Arthur Peter Mutharika, taking a lead. In terms of, is this a surprise to me as a Malawian, as an individual, as an analyst? Let me say it's not a surprise. You are aware his DPP party was the strongest opposition party, sometimes called government in waiting, sometimes called shadow government. So there isn't anything very strange. The campaign trail, APM, as we always call him in Malawi, a professor, he has also seen a very big following during the campaign trail. So looking at the results, to me, I cannot be surprised.
What is the latest then on the election vote counting? Is he still at 51%, Mutharika?
Honestly, yesterday we saw the Malawi Electoral Commission chairperson making preliminary results. Unfortunately, as of yesterday, the Electoral Commission hasn't come up with the final results, or to say what is the cumulative as of yesterday. But reliably and confirmed results, he's struggling towards 50.
Mutharika faced off for the fourth time against incumbent Lazarus. If he does get an outright win, do you think this might bring Chakwera's previous win to question? The 2019 elections were annulled in that country.
Yeah, we are still expecting when dilemma, there might be an outright win or a rerun. But leaving all other factors constant, people may not doubt the 2019, but they have questions on how he has managed the country over the 5 years. You are aware his regime was marred by devaluation, inflation, high cost of living, increased prices of farm imports, increasing prices of goods and services and domestic things. So it's nothing that can bring surprise. You are aware also during the primary elections, his party was marred with irregularities in their own primary elections in the select member of parliament. So you have seen that in his stronghold central region, most positions have gone to the independent candidates who lost the primaries but stand on their own. So this is just trying to testify that it might be within the party something was not well organized.
And with that same backdrop, could Malawi head for a rerun or a multi-party administration?
Actually, in Malawi, most times what we're expecting is a rerun elections. I am not well conversant. I'm a layman in the law area, but what I know, what we may have is a rerun.
All right. Eight clerks have been arrested. They've been accused of tampering with the votes. Are we expecting similar events to that of the last general vote because of this?
Yes, we have seen the arrest, but yesterday the Inspector General of Police has informed the print and electronic media and the Malawians that those people have been questioned and they are now released on bail. So to me, I saw it, if they are released on bail, I believe the grievance or the grave of the accusation may not be as great as we thought, because they are, as I'm speaking, all the 8, they are in their homes on police bail. So we may not be expecting that the allegations may be so big, but anyway, it's an allegation in the electoral process. That's why they were cautioned.
Both the incumbent party and opposition political party, the United Democratic Front, have filed complaints to the Electoral Commission. The opposition seeks a release of all signed tally sheets to be made public. What is your take on this?
Truly, it seems there has been irregularities in the 2025 electoral process, mainly the elections day. There has been reports of differences in the original results and the results being transferred electronically. There has been some results being retained from the district commissioners. So there might still be some areas to need to be considered too. And you have also seen that it seems we had, as Malawi, had a poor monitoring system. Political parties hadn't strong monitoring mechanism at the polling centers. You see, monitors were there, but the results being changed, they actually didn't know their job. You have also seen the high number of null and void votes. So there are still some areas where we, as a country, may need some changes, as Electoral Commission may need to have their eyes on.
What are young people saying? Mutharika is over 80 years old. We know he's not been declared the outright winner as yet, but should he be an outright winner, do the youth see him as someone who can implement a comprehensive and successful youth development plan, given the majority population in his country coming from this group?
Yes, in Malawi we have the majority of the Malawians are the youth. Unfortunately, it seems people in Malawi has voted out of anger. People in Malawi has voted out of frustration. People in Malawi, they relatively had no choice, so they had to vote for the odd man who is staggering towards 90. But it's still debatable. People are still debating in various print and electronic media in different circles that he may not deliver the promise. People are still pointing that it will be other people around him who will run the state, not him as per se. So it's the youth will really not get what they deserve. They will not serve the purpose. That's what the youth are saying.
Right, we'll continue to monitor this vote counting in Malawi. Francis, thanks so much for your time, and we'll be checking in with you.
Thank you. I'm available. Anything, let's talk.
Great. Francis Piri is a political analyst based in Malawi. He's in Lilongwe there, giving us the latest in terms of provisional results coming from Malawi, who voted last week.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
The 80th United Nations General Assembly is underway in New York, and alongside the main debates, Africa is pressing its case for global reform. Over the weekend, the African Union hosted a high-level meeting at its permanent observer mission, marking 20 years of the Ezulwini Consensus, Africa's common stand on reforming the UN Security Council. The session brought together AU leaders, heads of state and policy experts, with fresh reports presented on strengthening Africa's voice in multilateral institutions. Dr. Solomon Derso, who is Executive Director of Amani Africa and lead author of the updated report on reforming the multilateral system, was there and spoke to our colleague Peter Ndoro soon after. Let's listen to their chat.
Thank you very much for having me, Peter. The Ezulwini Consensus is the common African position adopted by member states of the African Union in 2005, March 2005, by the Executive Council of the African Union in Ezulwini, then Swaziland, now Eswatini. It was a response to the negotiations that were unfolding at the time during the World Conference in 2005, which, as part of its agenda, had the question of the reform of the UN Security Council. As you know, the 15 members of the UN Security Council have 5 permanent members, of which none are from the African continent. And this is the continent that actually suffered what is now termed a historical injustice by virtue of its total exclusion from the permanent membership of the UN Security Council and its underrepresentation in the elected category. So it is the first of the African Union's common position. It asks for 2 permanent members from Africa that would have the full benefits and privileges of permanent membership in the UN Security Council. That would include veto power, and 5 elected or non-permanent members in the UN Security Council. The central point being rectifying the historical injustice of Africa's exclusion from the permanent category through the 2 permanent seats to be allocated for Africa, the number of non-permanent membership in the UN, because of the fact that Africa is the largest regional bloc in the UN membership, constituting 28% of the UN General Assembly membership.
Your panel's report says that the multilateral system faces reform or rupture. What does that mean for Africa today?
So the multilateral system that is organized on the basis of the post-Second World War power dispensation has run its course. Now, actually, it is failing to deliver on the most basic of the mandate for its creation and existence, which is basically the promise in the UN Charter of saving succeeding generations from the scourge of war. And we see today how the UN Security Council, for example, is utterly paralyzed to prevent, and once those conflicts erupt, to stop them. And we see the kind of carnage that is unfolding in front of our eyes, from Gaza to Sudan to Ukraine. And this multilateral system has basically shown the dysfunction that is at its core. And that is reinforced by basically the historical flaws in the system, particularly the crisis of legitimacy that it has been facing, as a result of the fact that it is completely outdated by not reflecting the current realities of the world, including by having a significant portion of the world from Africa completely outside of the UN Security Council. So the idea of rupture or reform is basically, if it doesn't reform, then it would face the kind of fate that the League of Nations prior to the United Nations had faced, that it would basically go to complete irrelevance.
Beyond the Security Council, what reforms are most urgent in the global financial system, debt, IMF, credit ratings, that kind of thing?
Well, for Africa, one of the most important pillar in respect of which Africa has been mobilizing is the development pillar. And that pillar has been, for example, organized within the Sustainable Development Agenda of the UN and African Union's its own Agenda 2063. But the way the international financial system is organized, the way it is structured, and the way it operates is in such a way that it actually hugely advantages the powers that actually set up that system more than 80 years ago. And it completely punishes and has become extortionist, if I may use, Secretary General Guterres' term, for the developing world, particularly for Africa. It puts high premium on risk for Africa, sometimes 8 to 10 times higher than the risk premium that is put to the developed world. And as a result, Africa systematically and continuously remains in this cycle of indebtedness, which now actually has put many of the economies of the continent in distress. So the idea of the high-level panel report, that is the joint Namibia and Amani Africa high-level panel on Africa and the reform of the multilateral system, proposes two things. One is the question of representation in the decision-making structures of the international financial and trading institutions of the world, including in terms of the expansion of the quota system in the IMF. That is one important aspect of it. The second aspect has to do with, in terms of representation, the availability of leadership positions in the bureaucracy of these institutions, because the bureaucracy of these institutions also determine the process for accessing development for development financing. And of course, the requirements and the criteria for development finance has to be one that is modeled on not the profit-oriented, creditors-centric design of financing, but one that actually takes account of and is responsive to the development needs and demands of the continent, including through leveraging the enormous resource endowment of the continent.
So you were at a meeting today as UNGA is underway 2025, and you were at a gathering which was organized, I think, by the AU. Tell us a little bit about what came out of that meeting and how it can maybe contribute in some way, particularly at this time whilst you're in New York for UNGA.
So today at the African Union Permanent Mission Mandela Hall, we had the convening of a roundtable that was put together by Open Society Foundations, the Africa Governance Institute, and my own organization, Amani Africa. And this is because of the work that these three organizations have undertaken on this question of the reform of the multilateral system, including this high-level panel report that you made reference to, that we, through the championship of the president of Namibia, steered, that Open Society Foundations actually supported. And the idea of the meeting is basically to continue to champion the campaign for Africa to achieve its quest for equitable and full participation in the UN Security Council through the realization of the ambitions of the Isolweni Consensus, in respect of which we started our conversation. Because this year marks the 20 years anniversary of the Isolweni Consensus, and this UN General Assembly convening that's happening, that is underway, marks the 80 years anniversary of the UN. As the UN marks its 80 years anniversary, it is fighting for its survival as a result of major budget cuts, but also because of the crisis of legitimacy and credibility that the UN, particularly its Security Council, is facing. And this moment, therefore, demands that there be a systematic overhaul of the UN that would necessarily require not only making the UN fit for the world of today, not of 1945, but also ensuring that the historical injustice that Africa suffered by its exclusion is fully rectified through implementing Isolweni Consensus. So it was an engagement with the Africa Group in New York, which is at the forefront of all the engagements around the negotiations for the reform of the UN Security Council through the General Assembly's intergovernmental negotiation IGN process, but also in terms of advocating for the follow-up to the Pact for the Future, which actually is one of the most recent successes of the African Union and its campaign for Isolweni Consensus, because that Pact for the Future that was adopted last September, to which our report contributed, affirmed the justness of the African position by recognizing that Africa's position and situation and stand needs to be given a special case and to be treated as a priority. So the idea is to build on this and to enhance Africa's role even within the existing UN Security Council process, because the 3 African members of the UN Security Council that are non-permanent, they have organized themselves to exercise increasing influence by virtue of their unity and delivering joint statements on not only African files and increasingly on other files as well, therefore becoming a bloc to reckon with. When various resolutions or statements are negotiated, the Africa Group actually negotiates as a bloc increasingly. And therefore, it has become a force that even the permanent 5 cannot ignore, because in order to move anything in the UN Security Council, you need 9 positive votes, and the 3 votes are, from a regional perspective, some of the most formidable ones. So basically, following this 2-way engagement for Africa in advancing and enhancing its voice and agency in the global arena.
That was Dr. Solomon Derso, who is Executive Director of Amani Africa and co-convener of the Africa High-Level Panel on Multilateral Reform. He was speaking to our colleague, Peter Ndoro. It's now time for our news headlines at 8:30 Central African Time. Let's say good morning to Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Malawians remain on edge as they await the outcome of this week's election, with disputes over alleged irregularities emerging. Observers say the contest is neck and neck between President Lazarus Chakwera and his predecessor Peter Mutharika. A Corruption Watch organization says South Africans are looking forward to National Police Commissioner Fanny Masemola's testimony before the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry in Pretoria this morning. And the U.S. President Donald Trump says the violent death of right-wing Christian activist Charlie Kirk's violent death means that he will be remembered as a martyr for American freedom. Trump was speaking at Kirk's memorial service in Arizona yesterday. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Tsinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Time now to catch in with what's happening in the world of sports. Here's Musibudi Makura with those details.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Asanda. Very good morning once again from the sports desk. So teams from Africa, the African continent, have reason to celebrate, with 8 countries making it onto the medals table, collecting a combined total of 23 medals at the recently concluded World Championships in Tokyo, Japan. So Kenya led the way as the top-performing African nation, finishing second overall behind the USA with 11 medals comprising of 7 gold, 2 silver, as well as 2 bronze, an improvement from their showing at the previous championships in Budapest, Hungary, about 2 years ago. Botswana, meanwhile, also impressed, securing 2 gold in the men's 4x400 meter relay, the 400 meter final, as well as having won an athlete from Botswana having won that race in the 400, and then the bronze medal also in the same race, placing them on the continent's second best team. Ethiopia, meanwhile, not the usual dominant, best managed 4 medals, but none of them were gold this time around. The other countries, Tanzania got the gold medal in the men's marathon event. Algeria, Nigeria, as well as Morocco each claimed silver medals, and South Africa wrapped up a bronze medal in the men's 4x400 meter relay, featuring Life Pillay, Wade van Niekerk, Odemo Ogoni, as well as Uzagiti Nene. Well, Botswana produced a brilliant performance to win the men's world 4x400 meter relays in atrocious conditions on Sunday, edging out the USA as well as South Africa in a blanket finish to become the first African winners of the event. Rain hammered down the USA, who had scraped into the final after beating Kenya, and ran off on Sunday morning, led the way at the final changeover. However, Colin Genatsibi, the 21-year-old winner of the individual title, ran a fantastic leg to snatch gold in 2 minutes 57.76 seconds. The USA, winners of the 9 out of the 10 world titles, changed all 4 of their athletes in the final from their morning runoff and took silver from South Africa by 2,000ths of a second, after they were both timed at 2 minutes 57.83 seconds. So let's hear from Litsile Tebogo, who was part of the winning Botswana team.
It wasn't a good conditions for us, but we just have to swallow that and just bring it in. And the initial plan was to come here and attempt the whole record. That was the initial plan that we came out here with. And then when it started raining, we had to adjust to that plan and make up a new plan, just beat the United States. That was the main goal, because they've been dominating for a long time. So somebody had to stop them, and we are proud to stop them from that dominance. And we want to dominate for the longest possible.
On to football news now. Pep Guardiola's attempt at parking the bus in London to help Manchester City pinch 3 vital points almost paid off, but Gabriel Martellini's 93rd minute equaliser salvaged a 1-1 draw for the host Arsenal, although neither side will be left satisfied as their Premier League title aspirations were down to blow. City boss Guardiola dismay was captured by the pained expression on his face, at full time applauding the travelling support before dragging himself down the tunnel with slumped shoulders. Not only will the manner of the late goal have hurt the side, but it also left leaders Liverpool as the real victors this weekend, going 5 points clear at the top of the table, looking ominous in the defence of their crown with a 100% winning record from 5 games. Pep Guardiola had this to say after that match.
Heads off to the team, how they're resilient. Of course, it's so difficult where you're not effective in high pressing, and you're not effective in the build-up. Always is so tough and so difficult to do it. we make some transitions. I think the result is fair. It's a little bit, we're close in the 5 of them results, but I think in general Arsenal was better.
On to cricket news now. India as well as Pakistan players did not shake hands once again as India comfortably won the side's feisty second meeting at the Asia Cup by 6 wickets in Dubai. There was no handshakes when India beat Pakistan last Sunday as the rivals' first meeting since the military conflict between the two nations earlier on this year, which resulted in a complaint by Pakistan to organisers and doubts around the continuation in the competition. So having both progressed to the Super 4 stages, the captains did not acknowledge each other at the toss, and the two teams did not shake hands after India cruised to a chase of 172 with 7 balls to spare. There was a series of heated flashpoints during the chase, most notably when the umpire had to step in between opener Ashbeheshik Sharma and Pakistan bowler Haris Rauf. Now, India as well as Pakistan engaged in a 4-day military conflict in April of this year following a deadly militant attack on tourists in India's administered Kashmir. And finally, in tennis news, Italy defended the Billie Jean King Cup title as Yasmin Paolini beat Jessica Pegula to wrap up a 2-0 victory over the USA. The world number 8 was in supreme form as she raced to a 6-2, 6-4 victory in Saint-Jean to secure Italy's 6th title. Paolini is undefeated in singles as well as doubles at the Billie Jean Cup this year and has lost just once in her previous 10 matches at the competition. The 29-year-old was part of Italy team that finished runner-ups to Canada back in 2023 before guiding them to their first title in 11 years against Slovakia just last year. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, our email address is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. I'm back with more sports news in the next hour with the On the Move team for Channel Africa Sport. I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. This September, Channel Africa celebrates Heritage Month, a time to honor the stories, the rhythms, and the languages that make us who we are. Whether you're in Lagos or the shores of Zanzibar, to the mountains of Lesotho or the markets of Dakar, we are united in diversity.
Najivunia kuwa Mwafrika.
Kukondolera Afrika ndiye nduwake.
Proudly African and fabulous.
Let us preserve our languages. Let's embrace our uniqueness. Let's embrace our cultures and celebrate the beauty of our continent. Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
Let's find out now what's happening in the world of business as we say good morning to Buntle Headbush.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Asanda. Good morning. In our top business story at this hour, Egypt's wealthiest man, Nassef Sawiris, says he's seeking to invest up to $50 billion in U.S. infrastructure projects and is consolidating his publicly traded holding companies in Abu Dhabi. This marks a big pivot of Sawiris' career, coming after his focus on chemicals and his initial presence in cement. He says his business, Orascom, is seeking to capitalize on a surge of spending in the U.S. in areas such as data centers, while leveraging Orascom's expertise in construction and the more than $1 billion in cash on the company's balance sheet. Sawiri says Orascom also has the advantage of its deep experience in the construction and project management sector. Mauritius Central Bank Governor Ramasitanen has agreed to resign this week following Prime Minister Navin Ramgoolam's call for him to step down amid signs of a power struggle in the bank. The decision comes after several weeks of internal tensions that have weakened the institution. The Bank of Mauritius plays a crucial role in the country's economy. It manages monetary policy, supervises the banking system, and ensures the stability of public debt. The United States are now engaged in text-based negotiations on a future bilateral trade deal. And Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Park Stau, says significant progress on the way forward has been made. Ahead of joining the South African delegation for this week's UN General Assembly, Tau spent a number of days in Washington, D.C., meeting with the U.S. Trade Representative and key members of Congress. The minister indicated that part of the talks sought to reduce the high 30% duty imposed on South African exports and the future of the African Growth and Opportunity Act, which is due to expire at the end of September.
There were indications that we're making significant progress in terms of the discussions and the way forward. And what's the way forward, you would ask? The U.S. will give us a revised text on the basis of the comments and questions over the past week. We anticipate that that would be given to us early in the next week. It would give us about 2 weeks to consider, to consult stakeholders, sister departments, go to cabinet, get a mandate, and be able to respond. And from there, we'd be able to then get into the details of the negotiations.
South Africa's Independent Financial Advisors Forum has slammed the city of Tshwane in the Gauteng province for pushing ahead with a tender to appoint a single medical aid broker for its employees. IFAF, a non-profit organization representing accredited brokers, first flagged concerns last month after the city advertised the contract, which it says is irregular and unlawful. It says a medical aid brokerage tender violates employees' rights to choose an alternative medical aid broker. IFAF Deputy Chairperson Buti Sikasa.
When we attended their compulsory briefing on the 26th of August, we raised a few things, but one of them was, did they have consent from employees of the city or their representative? The answer was no. Now, in terms of Regulation 28.7, as clarified, the city requires consent for the city to act as an agent to appoint a broker. So they don't have that consent, so therefore they can't act as an agent. Now, it's shocking that the city still wants to proceed with a tender, whereas they don't have the agency.
Some of Europe's biggest airports battled to restore normal operations yesterday after hackers disrupted automatic check-in systems, with Brussels asking airlines to cancel half of Monday's flight departures due to persistent problems. Hackers on Friday targeted check-in and boarding systems provider Collins Aerospace, owned by RTX, disrupting operations at London's Heathrow, Europe's busiest airport, Berlin Airport, and in Brussels. Passengers faced long queues, cancellations, and delays on Saturday. Airport officials say while the disruption eased significantly in Berlin and Heathrow yesterday, delays and flight cancellations were continuing. In a statement, Collins said it was working with 4 impacted airports and airline customers and was in the final stages of completing the updates needed to restore full functionality. And now for a look at the indicators. $1 US in Nigeria is trading at 1,492 naira this morning. In Botswana, it's at 13 pula 11. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shillings 63. And in Zambia, it's 23 kwacha 61. The BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 32. Russia, 83 rubles 41. In India, it's 88 rupees and 9. China, 7 yuan 11. And South Africa, $1 is trading at 17 rand 31 cents. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $3,692 per ounce, platinum at $1,420 per ounce, while Brent crude oil is at $67.10 a barrel. And those are your business news. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Buntle Headbush.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Good morning starts here. Rise and shine on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
South Africa's Deputy Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment, Bernie Swartz, is leading a government campaign to plant 1 million trees this Wednesday on the 24th of September. The trees will be planted on the same day on Wednesday in all of the 9 provinces in the country. Deputy Minister Bernie Swartz now joins us in studio to tell us more about this amazing project and greening the country. How are you, Deputy Minister? Thanks for joining us.
I'm very well, thank you. Good morning to you as well.
Great, and I feel like I know the answers to these questions already because we've been in conversation before coming on the air. But for our viewers, is it possible to plant 1 million trees in one day? Similar projects have been done in Guinea. We were talking about Guinea just now, them having hosted a referendum on Sunday, and the Philippines also on an international front are some examples.
Yes, it is possible, and indeed we have looked at all other countries because throughout the world, as part of the Great Green Wall, everybody is planting trees, and our president launched this in 2021 and the department started implementing it in the year 2022. By then the president was envisaging that we'll do 10 million trees over a period of 5 years at 2 million trees per year. But because of budget, it was not possible. And when I arrived at the department, I said to them, let us turn around the strategy. And we started in April to say, let us first have a 1 employee, 1 tree program where we mobilize all employees around government. It took us about time because we had to mobilize the unions to first buy in and get our DDG to also speak to the bargaining council. Once that was done, we launched it and we used the slogan, my tree, my oxygen, plant yours today. Because we said that what South Africans must just understand in simple terms is that the oxygen that we breathe comes from trees. And then we translated that into all the official languages. We then went out to all industry. When we say all industry, our view was that we want all South Africans to participate. But we first went to the culprits, the contractors, the estate developers. We went to Eskom, we went to the Council of Minerals, we went to everybody in the mining industry, and we went to universities, and we are sitting at a stage where so many people have come on board, NGOs, NPOs, to say that we've got so many trees to donate. We also went out to the resident ambassadors in the country. So we have got Terokay, who also donated 8,000 trees to us as an embassy. And we have got the Dean of Corps through the regions that have also donated trees to us. They're also participating. They participated. But how do you plant 1 million trees in one day? We then said we will divide it into 115,000 trees per province. And because we have got 9 departments in the provinces, our MECs are participating. We as a department have got regional offices within all the provinces. But where do you plant these trees? Because we don't want to just plant trees for the purposes of planting and for the purposes of counting 1 million trees. We then said we'll identify what we call safe spaces, which is our early learning development centers, primary schools, high schools, police stations, hospitals, old age homes, orphanages and correctional services centers, because they are going to adopt the trees. We will monitor the trees every 3 months to check on their progress, but they will adopt the trees because these trees will now be in safe spaces, because in the schools you already have people who are looking after the school grounds and the gardens. In the hospitals, clinics, you also have the general workers that take care of the gardens also there. So we know that our trees will be in safe spaces because we want, when we go back, the trees must be there. But we must talk about why are trees important and why we must not cut trees, because trees are important in all the aspects. Like I have said, that we get shades from the trees, we get fruits from the trees, because the president said 60% of the trees that we plant must be fruit trees, because it must also talk to the food security program. And then 40% of the trees must be indigenous trees. And we know that our late President Nelson Mandela launched the yellowwood tree as our South African indigenous tree. So most importantly, that is the indigenous tree that we are planting, but all other trees as well. And we have done a scientific data research study through our researchers at our South African Institute of National Biodiversity, which is one of our entities. Because of climate change and its impact on the environment, there are trees that no longer grow in some of the provinces. For example, the citrus farmers in Mpumalanga have not had a good harvest over 3 years of lychees because there is no rain. So we know that we will not allow people to start planting lychee trees because they are not catching up properly. So we have done that in all the provinces, and we have told the provinces not this tree but this tree will be able to grow properly, so that we don't just plant an orange tree and after 5 years there's not a single orange on those trees. And we have also formed the relationship with the traditional leaders in the rural areas so that they form communal fruit gardens, because we know that people in the rural areas, when they've got 20 rand, they don't think about apples, bananas and pears and grapes. They will think of electricity and bread. So that's true that people can be able to be part of the harvest through the traditional leaders. So we are also planting trees there deep in the rural areas. So on Wednesday, we know already which school is planting how many trees, who are the learners that are going to be there, even if it's a holiday, who is the school principal that is going to be there, or the teacher. We know in each police station who's going to be stationed there, how many trees we are planting there, and we are starting to take trees to the planting spaces which are far from, because all the botanical gardens in the country are our tree banks. So if you were to come to any botanical garden in the provinces tomorrow, you are going to find tree, and it's demarcated DFFE tree bank, because those botanical gardens belong to Sanbi, which is one of our entities. So that is where we've been storing our trees, in the tree banks. We have also done to make sure that we don't plant trees that are not root friendly, because we don't want the trees over the years to damage infrastructure. We've also made sure that the trees we are going to plant are not going to need water, and a lot of water, because there's scarcity of water in the country. So we have gone that deep in terms of what we want to do, in terms of the type of trees we are planting, and whether they will not uproot pavings and buildings later on. So all the trees we are planting, we know that they are root friendly and they are not going to give us problems. So we are ready. There are more than 200 schools participating. When we are saying more than 200, those schools have all been called. We've got a list. So for each area we are planting, we've got a map. So you'll be able to follow what gives you 115,000 trees. We've also signed an MOU with the Council of Churches. So all the churches in the country which belong under the Council of Churches, they've provided us with safe spaces to plant, because we know in the church there's a caretaker. Sometimes there's a priest with his or her family living within the church, having a house there, and sometimes there's a caretaker. Because for us, we are saying that even if you have done everything and there's a need to cut a tree, but we don't encourage it. And the architects and the planners of the municipality say there's nothing we can do to construct here or to erect whatever they want to do, whether it's a road, they have to cut a tree. For each tree you cut, you must replace it with 20 trees. If you cut 2 trees, it means you are going to plant 40 trees to replace those trees, because future generations must find the environment intact. They must find the planet intact. We also know that there's the economic side of trees, where we know that the chairs we are sitting on, the tables we write on, the beds we sleep on, the infrastructure that we have, there's wood needed, there's poles needed. That is the economic side of it, because people are always asking me, are you as a department planting trees to collect carbon credits? And we say no. We are planting trees to teach people why there is a need to preserve trees and why it's important. And it even becomes more especially important now because of the floods and the climate change. People just build on the banks of rivers, and there is no planning. And we are saying that trees even become important there, because we are also talking to the traditional leaders, because there is indigenous knowledge exchange there. Long time ago, there were no town planners, but people knew which side of the house must face, which side the windows must face, and why you must have trees so that when the wind comes, it doesn't blow away the roof. So we are also doing that indigenous exchange on the knowledge around trees, because our researchers will tell us this tree, you can use it, you boil the water, it will clear, tight chest and whatever. When you get to the traditional leaders and the old people, they tell you this tree, when you've got a boil or a saw, this is what the leaves can do, this is what the roots can do. But for us, what is important is to teach people. Now, the other thing is that where we are here now in Auckland Park is the leafy suburbs. When you are walking under along the paving, there's trees, there's shade. When you go to Soweto, the air quality is different. All you see is roofs of RDPs, there's no greening. So the president always says that he was in Addis Ababa, and when he walks around, everything is leafy, it's green. But when he drives in Soweto, everything is bare. There is not a tree, there is no greenery. So we want that whenever that the Department of Human Settlement hands over an RDP house, a low-cost house, there must be 5 indigenous trees, 3 in fruit trees, and 2 indigenous trees, which means 5 trees. So that one day when we go to Soweto, it's also leafy. And the air quality, because we can drive from here, you will feel that the air is not the same like in Soweto. And it's purely because...
And speaking of Soweto then, that township based here in South Africa, in Johannesburg, the project also aims to create township economies through nursery businesses as well. How do you hope this will assist in those communities?
It will assist because then the culture of people buying trees from a nursery and planting it, because currently I don't think anybody thinks of coming to town to go to a nursery and buy a tree and go back to Soweto. But we want people must find nurseries within the community. They must be owned by young people. They must be owned by women, by people with disabilities. So as the department, we do have nurseries throughout the country where we are grooming young people in the township to own the nurseries, to know the type of trees, to even be able to advise people when they buy trees. Because I'm telling you now that even in Soweto, a tree that grows in Dobsonville might not be able to grow in Naturena, in Freedom Park, might not be able to grow in Dlamini, might not be able to grow in another area in Meadowlands. So we want people in the township, according to those nurseries, to own nurseries according to the trees that they're able to grow in the environment. And we also want them to even exchange species of trees, to say that as young people, and we want they must be entrepreneurs. We are grooming green entrepreneurs so that it talks to the climate change as well, because you need young people, because if the future generations don't own climate change and its impact on the environment, and especially around trees, we are not going to achieve what we want to achieve as government.
So the planting, Deputy Minister, will be happening on the 24th of September, as much as government launched this project on July of this year. Those who are not directly involved, what can they be doing to participate in any way?
What they can do, they can go onto our website, which is www.dffe.gov.za. We've got an IT system there. So when you are planting the tree in your yard, you go into the system, you'll be able to upload a picture of your tree, a picture of yourself if you want to. You'll be able to give us your location. We'll be able to count your tree and know that you have participated. And this campaign does not end on the 24th. We know that on the 24th it's Heritage Day. We have partnered with the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, because they are hosting the National Government Heritage Day on the 24th in Oudtshoorn in the Western Cape, where the Deputy President of the country will be the one representing the president, because the president is in Unga. So he's not the president who will plant, but the deputy president. So at that primary school in Oudtshoorn, the deputy president will unveil a multi-sports complex and then plant a tree. So if he's planting at 10 o'clock, the whole country at their different spots will be waiting ready to plant at the same time. So we will have 1 million trees being planted at the same time as the country, and we'll have a telethon that will be being done for us by Prime Media, who have contributed to our campaign by assisting us. They will be helping us to tally our numbers according to the mapping that we have done for the whole 9 provinces. But for us, we are very excited and happy, and we are saying to all South Africans that everybody must plant a tree on that day. You don't necessarily need to be where we are having our main events through all the 9 provinces and planting where we are planting, but we are encouraging all South Africans to plant at their homes. We are encouraging SABC to plant here in Auckland Park. When we are planting, you must also plant your tree to mark our million trees.
Deputy Minister, thank you so much for the time that you have made to chat to us and join us in studio. And I think we're all educated as much as we need to be about the planting of trees. Thanks for all that you're doing. Berenice Swartz is South Africa's Deputy Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment, and that's where we end that chat. Also then, that's where we end the show today. That's the end of Rise and Shine. Do join us on Channel Africa tomorrow. That will be 6 till 9, and we say goodbye and hand you over to the very capable team of Benjamin Mushatama and Palisa Tao. They've got On the Move coming up next, so stay tuned for that. Right now, though, at 9 o'clock Central African time, let's say good morning to Onele Nzinzi. She's got our news bulletin, and I'm Asanda Beda. Goodbye for now.